This is the second and what I'm pretty sure will be at least 3 video tutorials on the web browser control, the C# web browser control. And in this one we're actually going to make our own web browser, which is pretty cool. You know, I mean, it's something I had no idea you could do with the web browser control. I was really pretty excited when I saw it, but unfortunately the embedded browser is not only Windows Explorer, which isn't my favorite browser, but it's also apparently an earlier version of Windows Explorer or Internet Explorer that doesn't really handle things like HTML5 and CSS3 very well, as I'll show towards the end of this video. But some of the things we're going to look at is the tool strip control, especially the split button, the button, and the text box controls of the tool strip control, and the status strip control, especially the status label. And we're going to look at a number of methods of the web browser. With the last video we just looked at navigate, and this one we're going to look at navigate, go back, go forward, go home, and refresh. And in addition to these, we're going to look at a web browser event, navigated, and a web browser property, URL. So let's create a new project and call it web browser 02. And it's actually closed down practically everything, or unpin it and drag a can I do that? I guess maybe if I expand this out. And open the toolbox, and in menus and toolbars there's both tool strip and status strip, and we want to drag over a tool strip, and you notice it appears in the component tray at the bottom as well as appearing at the top of the screen, and then also drag over a status strip which appears in the component tray, and it's at the bottom of the screen, although I have to roll down to see it. And now let's drag over a web browser. And don't let the web browser push you around. What it just did is it did a docking container. So we want to go over to the little triangle in the corner and select undock and parent container. So it'll make it small enough that we can still access our tool strip control and our status bar control. Alright, let's repin everything to the IDE so we can use it a little better. And go up to the tool strip control, and you notice this drop down gives you a number of possibilities. You can put in a button, a label, a split button, a drop down button, a separator, a combo box, a text box, or a progress bar. So you actually have quite a bit of variety you can put, although for the most part you almost always just put a button. But in this case let's put a split button. And you notice that the split button immediately has a drop down menu underneath it. And the main difference between the split button and the drop down button is that the split button you can only put in one option here, but with the drop down button you actually have cascading menu capability where you can put in cascaded items out to the side, but we don't want that much control. Let's just go to type here and say Google, and then select the control and go over to image, and hit the ellipse, and then we want to import an image. And I actually extracted a bunch of images previous to this, but they're ICO format, they're icons, so we want to change this to all files so we can see them. And if you're wondering where I got these icons, I actually got them from the Windows system itself. I have a 64-bit system, so I got them from c:/windows/sys-WOW64, and there was a lot of DLLs and a lot of EXEs and a lot of CPLs that were all queried by a utility I'm using called icons extract. And this is actually a small sampling I extracted from it. There was literally like over 1,000 icons on this directory that and all those different types of files. But that's sort of neither here nor there. You can probably get the utility off the internet, so I recommend it. You know, it's really valuable if you want to put icons to make your application look really professional. For this one, I think I'll select a globe or a picture of the Earth with a magnifying glass over it, since these are sort of predefined links to go to, which is different from a regular browser. But if you're creating your own browser, you want to do something different, or else what's the point? So I select that and press open, and then press OK, and you'll notice that icon appears in the tool strip. I've added 6 entries in the split button list, and the first thing we want to do is start giving things some meaningful names. So let's go over to the properties pane and call this TSB predefined, I guess. And I don't know if there's anything. And then for the Google, call this TSBMI for tool strip button menu item, and then say Google. And for Bing, call this TSBMI Bing. And I did the same naming convention for the rest of these menu items. And now to move to the next guy on the tool strip, let's just make this one a button and go over and change the image to something that looks like an arrow going back. I think I found a couple good ones. Yes, arrow going back. And then for this button, we'll change the image to an arrow going forward. And then to go with the Google Chrome convention, let's change this one to a refresh image. Well, that looks like a pretty good refresh, I guess. And the last one to a home image. And now the next thing we want to put on here is a text box. And we want it to be considerably bigger than that because we want to be able to type things into it. So let's see the size. Let's make the size about 500 wide. 25 high is still good. So that's stretched out quite a bit. And finally we want another button that says execute what's in there. And I actually agonized over what a good image for this would be, but I finally decided maybe a magnifying glass. It suggests looking for something, although it looks a little more like a lollipop there. Well, let's go back and change the naming convention again. This could be a TSB back, and this guy would be TSB forward. And for the text box, I think we should do some special Hungarian notation, something like TSB TXT, maybe URL. And the magnifying glass, oops, that's the image. Call it TSB Go. And I renamed a few of the others in pause mode if you're wondering if I left anything out. And then for the status strip, we have the option of status label, progress bar, drop down button, or another split button. So we just want to say where we are and the URL we're at in this. So we'll just select the status label and leave that as auto size true, so no matter how big the label gets, it'll just fill the space. And for this one we'll call it SSS label for a status strip status label, or label as Harry Potter would say. And now let's close everything up again, so we've got some room to work. And we want to stretch this guy out, but we actually don't want to stretch it out too high. This is a major tip, by the way, because if you stretch it out too high, you won't be able to access the drop down menu. And you want to leave some space for the status strip too. Oops. And make this whole thing bigger. But as I say, leave some space for the status strip or you won't be able to access it. It actually, as you can see there, it actually goes behind the the browser, so you can't click on it. It's kind of weird. But now we want to start adding functionality to this, so let's double click on the Google, and that takes us to TSBMI Google Click. And this is basically the navigate again. Oh, one thing we want to do also is on the web browser, go to the properties pane and give this a good name, like WB browser. And then once again in the Google, let's say WB browser dot navigate. http://google.com. And then do the same sort of thing for all the other menu items. So now we have all of our split button event handlers for the menu items implemented. And let's move on to the buttons. For this, the back button, we just want to say WB browser dot go back. Pretty simple, eh? And it's the same kind of simplicity for all these buttons actually. This one is WB browser go forward. And WB browser refresh. And finally WB browser home, or go home I should say. Although when I just typed home it got go home. That's kind of cool. And then for this button we want to actually do a navigate. But to the contents of the text box. So that's a little different and kind of cool. And then the next thing we want to do is an event. So on the properties we want to select the events and go to oh, we're not in the browser. Go to the properties and select the event and go to navigated. And that takes us to the navigated event handler. And we want to set the SS status dot SSS. Actually we don't seem to access this as a subcontrol. We just directly access SSS label. And set that equal to WB browser dot URL dot toString, so that wherever we navigate, even if we're navigating using the internal page to navigate to somewhere else, it'll report what the current URL is on the toString, because every time we navigate somewhere the navigated event will be fired. So now that we've got everything filled in, we can make this bigger. Don't have to worry about accessing anything. And maybe we should change the name of the form to something like Cyborg Magus Chrome Fox, maybe. And if we save this, Oh, I can't believe I wrote all that code without saving. And run it. See if we can go down to the drop down, the split button. And one thing I've noticed with the split button is you actually sort of have to follow this column down. If you wander off, it just closes. So go to Google, and you see Google appears. August Rodin's 172nd birthday. Let's see, or we can go to the New Boston, which is a great website. I learned a lot from two guys especially, Bucky Roberts and a guy named Adam who does C# tutorials, who really was sort of an inspiration to me, and he's like a 15-year-old kid. It's absolutely amazing. By the time he's my age, he'll probably be totally burned out. But here's the rub. If we go to my website, ooh, doesn't look too good. That's because my website totally doesn't take into account older browsers and older like HTML and CSS. It's purely HTML5 and CSS3, the latest and the greatest. In fact, much of the CSS3 is sort of beta site stuff. So if we press the home button to get out of here, this is my home page. And if we go somewhere like, say, to create a website, which is another person who kind of inspired me, Lisa. I think it's something like Lisa Irby. And she is also, like Bucky Roberts, extremely successful. They're sort of my brothers and sisters, except successful. But anyway, if we go here and say go to Overview, you notice the URL changes in the status. We go to Web Design, so we get a different in the status, and we can hit back and it'll go back to the Overview guy, and hit back again, it'll go to the main page, and hit forward, it'll go back to the Overview again. So that these buttons all work, and it's kind of cool. In effect, we've created our own browser. We could do something like type in youtube.com and say go to that, and it'll go to that URL, even though we just typed it in a text box. It's not pre-formatted or anything. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and learned a lot, and I'd appreciate it if you subscribe.